Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today you find me back at Douglas Airport on the Isle of Man, and we're going to fly leg 2 of our trip in the Flight FX Vision Jet, which will eventually take us back to London. But today we're taking our passengers fresh from their business meeting here on the island yesterday over to Newcastle in the northeast of England, where they're going to be meeting up with some colleagues for dinner. So that's the headcanon reason for the flight today, and we're going to be taking a relatively direct route, so not the most interesting route in terms of navigation, but nonetheless, if the weather permits, and today is not the world's greatest weather, I have to say, we may be able to see some interesting scenery along the way. Last time I did a full end-to-end video showing you everything from initial power-up of the simulator through to taking it all down at the end. You'll be pleased to know I'm not doing that again this week. That was very much a one-off. I wanted to show you what goes on behind the scenes, and hopefully that was interesting and useful. So this video should be quite a bit shorter, and we're already in the aircraft. We've got things mostly set up. I just need to import the flight plan, get my clearance, and go. So let's get on with that. First of all, let's get back into the cockpit of the aircraft. We're already powered up and all of the avionics are on, as you can see. The first thing that I need to do is to import my flight plan. Obviously in the real world I would be typing it in, or I guess you might be able to have it on an SD card and import it that way, or these days you can probably import it from a device if you have the right module installed in your Garmin setup. But we are going to do it from Simbrief this time, because that's something you can do on this aircraft, and last time you'll remember I didn't do that. So if you direct your attention to the bottom middle of the screen, you'll see the MFD GTC at the bottom there. There's a Simbrief button. If I click it, then it's going to grab a list of my recent flight plans from Simbrief, and the one on the top, the most recent flight plan, is the one that we want, so I'll request it. That means it's been downloaded, but it hasn't been imported into the simulator yet. So now I click import, and now it's been imported. So we can see our flight plan there, going from EGNS straight to 9B, and then Lakey, and then ETSI's. Now, that's the vast majority of our flight plan. I'm expecting to get an arrival, and in fact, I already know what that arrival will be because I've pre-programmed it to make sure we get the right one for the weather. And I'll be putting that in later, as well as the approach. So the flight plan will get a bit more complicated, and we'll need to do some setup for VNAV, etc. as we go. But for right now, that will do. There are no departures from here in the Isle of Man, so we're good with that. Let's just look at the VNAV page. So our climb profile, maximum rate climb, 165 knots. The aircraft is technically capable of faster than that, but that's the maximum rate climb. And then our cruise will be at 250 knots. Could push it to 260, maybe even 270. But again, at the altitude we'll be flying, that's more than fast enough. And then descent profile again at 250 knots. And we'll slow down a bit once we get below 10,000 feet and into the terminal area. Right, so now the flight plan set up, I just need to do initialization. So let's run the system tests. Higher. Fuel, I've already got enough, so I'll just sink.
Stall.
Weight and balance,
Stall.
again, already pre-programmed and good. And the flight plan is in, so now I can accept initialization and we're good to go. Okay. Right, first thing, let's go over to clearance delivery and get our clearance. Ground Flyer 10, ready to copy IFR clearance.
Flyer 10 is cleared to Echo Golf November Tango as filed. Expect departure runway 08. Climb and maintain flight level 040. Expect higher clearances 2 minutes after departure. Radar control on 125.3. Squawk 3234.
Flyer 10 is cleared to Echo Golf November Tango as filed. Climb and maintain flight level 040. Expect higher clearances 2 minutes after departure. Radar control on 125.3. Squawk 3234.
Flyer 10 readback correct. QNH is 989. Let us know when you're ready to taxi.
QNH is 989 Flyer 10.
Okay, there's our clearance, and as you can hear, the pressure's quite low today, 989, so expect quite a lot of cloud and maybe some rain. We'll be above that, I think, for most of the cruise, but then on the way down we might be back in it again, which I guess just makes things a little bit more exciting. I did consider faking the weather using Rex Weather Force with one of their dynamic weather themes, which evolves the static weather over time. But to be honest, it just doesn't feel realistic enough, and whilst I might do that if I'm looking for specific weather conditions, I think for today we'll take it as it is and see how we go. And at the end of the day, if the flight is unsuccessful or uninteresting, I'm just not going to publish the video. So if you're seeing this, that means it must be good. So you've got that to look forward to. Right, let's start with our checklist. So before engine start checklist, pre-flight inspection has been completed. The door needs to be latched. Passengers are on board. We'll close the door. You can see it close, and we can hear it latch. Parking brake is on. BAT 1 and 2 switches are on. Gen 1 and 2 switches are on. External GPU is connected, and the active FADEC channel A is displayed below the percentage thrust indication. Engine start. Right, strobe lights go on. CAS messages, we'll check. They look good. Thrust lever is idle. Brakes are held. Engine knob needs to go to run. Let's ask for engine start first. It's only polite. Ground, Flyer 10, request engine start.
Flyer 10 engine start approved.
Excellent.
Engine start approved Flyer 10.
Engine knob to run. Fuel pump verify advisory, it's on, and audibly confirm I can hear it. We don't have any of the messages we don't want. We'll press the engine button now. Then we'll keep an eye on the start process. So N2, watching it rise to 25%. I'll make sure N1 is also rising. There we go, and yes it is. And now I'm just going to monitor for anything crossing any red lines. Not expecting any problems. That looks like a good start. Okay, EIS, check all normal. Looks good. Engine IPS not required. ECS control panel set. External GPU has been disconnected. It disconnects automatically for whatever reason. Oxygen master switch, verify on. It's on. Avionics initialization, all complete. Caps pin removed and stowed. Doesn't exist. I'm thinking maybe I should 3D print one so I can sort of stow it somewhere. Passengers briefed. You've been briefed, right? Seat belts secured. Put your seat belts on, please. And then bleed switch to fresh air. Can hear that. And now we're ready for our taxi. Okay. Have the flight director on at this point. Gonna pre-arm heading mode, pre-arm VS mode at 1,000 feet per minute just for the initial takeoff. We can't put the autopilot on until 600 feet, and I'm almost certainly going to get an instruction to fly runway heading until 1,000 feet, so we won't go LNAV FMS mode until we've reached at least 1,000. Other than that, it should be a fairly routine takeoff. Okay. Ground, Flyer 10 is ready to taxi.
Flyer 10 taxi to runway 08 via taxiways Alpha, hold short runway 08.
Taxi to runway 08 via taxiways Alpha, hold short runway 08 Flyer 10.
Okay, it's a very
Flyer
simple
10
taxi.
advise when ready for departure.
Wilco Flyer 10.
And in fact, I'm close enough to the runway threshold that, as you can hear, pilot to ATC is already asking me if I'm ready to go. It's got ahead of itself a little bit, but that's fine. So let's have the nav lights on. and then go through the checklist. So com and nav GPS set, they are. Clearances obtained, altimeter set and checked. Yes, it is. Transponder set. Yes, it is. Heading initial alt set. Yes, they are. Flight controls free and correct. Let's check. Yes, they are. Trim 6 degrees up. Quick spin of the trim wheel does that. Flaps to 50% or position 1. Electric roll trim and flaps are reporting. Electric roll trim set. Toggle button press. I haven't actually got it mapped, so and I'm going to be on auto throttle anyway, so let's not worry about that. CAS messages check. They're fine at the moment. Seats must be in normal upright position. Yes, they are. Parking brakes are released. Brakes check. Brakes are working. Somehow I managed to unhighlight that. Next checklist is before takeoff, so we'll do that when we are at the threshold. All right then, we're ready to move. I'm going to apply a little bit of power. I'm just going to come around so that I've got more room to turn. This thing can turn quite nicely sort of on the spot. And out we go. This is the jet center, so basically where private jets would park up at EGNS, and I figure that is probably where I wanted to be. We didn't actually park here last time because I hadn't really done my research and didn't know exactly where I should be on the airport. So forgive the unrealism, but in my headcanon, they just towed the aircraft over here after we parked. All right, so there's the runway threshold. Now it's quite a long displaced threshold, so I wasn't asked to hold short, so I was asked to report ready for departure. So I figure I can go round onto the displaced threshold and call in from there. While we're doing that, let's look at the before takeoff checklist. So departure briefing is complete. Landing lights as required. I'll put them on when we turn onto the runway. Pro-peak switch can go on now. Engine IPS switch as required. It's not required. Wing stab IPS switch should be off, and it is. CAS messages, there are none. Trim is at 6 degrees up. Flaps are at 50% reporting, and we don't have any CAS alerts. And finally, at the moment, the multifunction windows are configured as I would like them. Alright, let's enter the runway and stop on the displaced threshold. Landing lights can go on. By the way, the taxi and landing lights on this aircraft are the same, so there's much less to do in terms of light functionality than there would be on some other aircraft. Tower, Flyer 10, ready for departure.
Flyer 10, winds are 061 at 16 knots, cleared for takeoff. Runway 08, maintain runway heading until above 1,000 feet, then proceed on course.
Clear for takeoff. Runway 08, maintain runway heading until above 1,000 feet, then proceed on course. Flyer 10.
Okay, so the winds are going to knock my nose a little bit left, but not by much. 16 knots though, so it's not insubstantial. So I need to watch out for that. Just double check everything else looks good before takeoff. Yeah, everything does look good. So brakes hold, thrust lever advance to take off power. Check everything looks normal on the EIS, it does. Release the brakes. Realised I didn't arm my speed bugs. And you can take off from the displaced threshold like that, you just can't land on it. There's 90 knots. Positive rate, gear up. Gear is reporting up. .600 feet, autopilot goes in. And 1,000 feet, LNAV armed. And now we're going to make a turn onto course. Flaps can come up. And auto throttle goes on. Just run through and get rid of that checklist.
Flyer 10 contact Ronald's Way radar control on 125.3. Have a good morning.
Radar control on 125.3 Flyer 10.
Alright,
Radar control Flyer 10 climbing to flight
flaps
level
up.
040.
Thrust level,
Flyer
thrust lever to
10
climb.
good morning. Radar contact.
And the transition here is at 3,000 feet, so I've got a standard barrow when I get to 3,000, which is pretty low, certainly by US standards. There's a big ship here, seeing the end of it now, and that is, I think, a static item on the scenery. There are a few ships in the harbour there, which I think are all static as part of the airport scenery. There will be other ship traffic around because they do have global AI ship traffic, but I'm not seeing any at the moment. Also, we've got air traffic today courtesy of FSLTL. Again, I'm not currently seeing anything, but we may encounter some later.
Flyer 10 climb to flight level 110.
Climb to flight level 110.
We'll go with flight level change mode for that climb, and then we'll go to standard barrow. And we are on our way up. Should be hitting the cloud layer before too long. I don't think it's particularly deep, so we should be able to come out the other side. We're going to top off at flight level 210 today, but we'll be descending relatively quickly, so I don't know how much time we're going to have above the cloud. But for now, the visibility is not terrible. If we're flying over there, things look altogether nicer. Anyway, I hope you are doing well.
Flyer 10 contact Manchester Centre on 118.77. Enjoy your morning.
Centre on 118.77. Take care, Flyer 10.
So I'm just going to run through the climb checklist while I'm here. So thrust levers are set, engine parameters, I'm monitoring, cabin pressure is
Centre
climbing and I'm monitoring.
10 climbing to
Ice
flight
protection as
level
required.
110.
May well be
Flyer
required.
10, good morning.
In fact, yeah, I'm going to have engine, wing and windshield ice protection all on. Hopefully we don't ice the flaps up. And then transition altitude has already been reached. Okay, cruise checklist we don't need for now, so we'll go back to a full map. See the weather, courtesy of Connext. It is not great, but it's all green where we're going, so it shouldn't be a huge factor. I'm getting a little bit of chop and a little bit of being blown around, but that's to be expected in this kind of weather. Your damper is on, so this is about as good as it gets. Anyway, as I was saying, I hope you're doing well. and you are enjoying your flying. I know I am. Still very much enjoying the Vision Jet here, but I've got more coming in the near future. So we'll be flying the Sting S4 in a future video, and maybe a few after that. If you're not familiar with that, it is an ultralight aircraft from FS Reborn. I held off on buying it for quite a while just because I didn't really have a use for it, but now I've bought a whole bunch of small airstrips and airfields, farm strips in the UK. There's a bunch more I'm planning on getting.
Flyer 10,
do
climb
a
to flight
series
level 170.
flying around
Climb
some of
to flight
those.
level 170, flyer 10.
Kind of inspired by the YouTube channel Short Field. If you've not checked that channel out, you probably should. I'll leave a link in the description on the video that I'm going to do. So we're doing that, and the crucial thing there is waiting for the updated G3X avionics from Working Title coming in SU15, and if everything works according to plan, SU15 should be releasing today. So I should be able to get hold of that later on today and then start trying out the new G3X. So I'll have a look at that, maybe have a look at the other aircraft with the G3X and see how they're doing, and then hopefully the couple of other aircraft I have which are G3X enabled will also get updates to add the new Working Title avionics. So that'd be the RV14 and the RV10. So looking forward to that. Then in terms of techniques and sim build and all of that kind of stuff, I've got a series planned for building backlit panels. So without going into too much detail at this point, I want to rebuild both of these panels and eventually build lots of other panels. And I wanted to make this engine panel and this brake panel fully backlit as the rest of it is, so I can fly it at night. And in order to do that, I needed to learn the techniques for building backlit panels. Well, I tried a couple of things based on other people's experience, and to be honest, they didn't work for me. I'm going to do a first video talking about the things I did that didn't work and the kind of the history of this project, because I've been trying to do it since summertime last year pretty much. And eventually, spoilers, I realized that the only way I could do this would be to get my hands on a laser cutter that would let me precisely cut the panels and engrave the lettering into them. So I went ahead and did that, but then discovered that that laser cutter that I bought wouldn't actually do what I wanted, because it was visible light and it couldn't cut clear acrylic, nor could it engrave on white surfaces. So that was a bit of a bust. So then I went ahead and bought a CO2 laser cutter, which can do that, and I'll explain the difference between those in a future video. But that is a hobby project that requires an awful lot of modding and customization to make it useful, and I mean a lot. So I bought the cheapest one you could possibly get, and to make it actually useful you then have to do quite a bit of additional work. It's still going to work out a lot cheaper than the nearest viable alternative, so it was the right thing to do, but it's also not an immediate gratification thing. So I've been working on that for a few months now at the kind of pace that I can sustain, which isn't very much, and I've been filming it as I go, so I have quite a lot of footage in the can already, but I still have a long way to go, and I'm not sure exactly when I'm going to get to do all of those things. So I will start releasing a series about that, but not until I'm confident that I can release it on a regular schedule and not have big gaps, which means I need to have gotten so far with the build and
Flyer
be
10,
essentially
climb
ready
to
to
flight level
start
210.
building the
Climb to
backlit
flight
panels.
level 210.
And once that series of videos about actually building out my laser cutting capability and some other fabrication stuff is complete, then I'll get into a series of actually making the backlit panels and showing you the various techniques for that. So that's a long-term project for the channel this year, and hopefully that will lead into, towards the second half of the year, some action finally on building the complete new cockpit in my back bedroom. But that's going to require a lot of work to be done in the back bedroom, which I am not currently able or ready to do. So that's kind of the plan for the year, and in between times we'll be doing flight videos and anything else that really occurs to me. And as always, if you want to suggest video topics in the comments below, then I'm more than happy to take some requests. So that's future plans. Meanwhile, we've passed 9B and or Nineb, I don't know how you pronounce it, and we are still over the Irish Sea. You can see the British coast ahead of us there. We're going to cross near Barrow in Furness. Over to the right, can't see it right at the moment, is Morecambe Bay. And we are going to head out to Lakey. And that's going to take us into, well, as it sounds, the Lake District. Not massively populated in terms of big towns, that part of the country, so we're not going to see much in the way of towns and cities, though we will fly right over Kendal. And then we're going to cross the country pretty much in a straight line, heading towards Etsy's, which is near to Durham and Bishop's Auckland, which gets us firmly into the northeast. And then we're likely to be flying well, not even likely, I know we'll be flying the Etsy 1J arrival into runway 07. I'll wait until I get my actual instruction from ATC before I program it, but I know it's coming. Don't know if we'll get to see much of Newcastle on the way down. We are going to be flying an in and out course, so we should be going over Newcastle city centre, provided that it's clear enough that we can see it. We'll have a look down, look at the bridges over the Tyne, and I can talk a bit about my own personal history with Newcastle as we get there. Okay. Let's just pop outside for a minute. Ooh, nice rainbow on the drone cam. So we can see some of the landscape down there. That's Morecambe Bay over there. And then we've got I'm not really sure what it's called. I mean, it's basically a river inlet here ahead of us. We've got the town of Millom on one side and Askham in Furness on the other side. And then, as you can see, we've got some hilly territory. And that's really the beginning of the Lake District. So we'll be passing fairly close to Windermere, just off the tip of Windermere. But there's also Lake Coniston, where various water speed records have been undertaken in the UK for many years. We should be able to see those as we pass with just this fairly light cloud. So we'll take a look at them. And then over to this side where the rainbow is, we've got, again, a few more hills and some moors, and eventually up the coast the town of Whitehaven, which then leads into the northwest coast, so Workington, Maryport, Cockermouth, etc. Nice part of the country. Haven't spent a lot of time here myself, I have to say, but I have spent quite a bit of time in Newcastle, which is a whole other topic. But yeah, all very nice. The LOD, unfortunately, means that you can see the tiles there are redrawing as we go. I'd love to turn the LOD up, but if I have TLOD up, then by the time we get down to Newcastle, we'll be getting significant stutters. There are programs you can use that will adjust your TLOD on the fly. Let's just get back in the cockpit. Also, let's have the headphones on. Because
Flyer
the engine
10
noise is a little bit
expect the
aggressive.
Etsy 1 Juliet arrival
there we
with
go,
the
that's what I'm
Etsy's
expecting.
transition for the ILS approach to runway 07 with the NT1 transition at Newcastle.
Expect the Etsy 1 Juliet arrival with the Etsy's transition for the ILS approach to runway 07 with the NT1 transition flyer 10.
Okay, I can program that in. Unfortunately, the Navigraph database doesn't recognize the Etsy's transition, but it is the first waypoint on the sequence, so that does more or less the same thing. And then we'll add in the approach as well. ILS 07 with the NT1 transition, and we'll load that. Okay. Sorry, just realised I was on the wrong view for you there, so you didn't see me do any of that, but you've seen the G3000 before. And then if we go to the charts view for a minute, and then we go to the arrival chart. So this is the, which is this? That's the wrong one. This is the right one, sorry. So you can see we're going to come in at ETSI's, and then we're going to make a left turn, I think, because we're on the ETSI-1 Juliet. So we're going to make a left turn, head towards NTS-01, then Eruxi. From Eruxi, we'll make a right turn and head to N1, which is just basically at the, or just by the NT beacon that you can see there. Sorry, I'm trying not to sneeze at the moment, that's why I'm holding my nose. And then if we look at the approach chart, we want the ILS DME runway 07. There you go. Let's zoom in a bit. So you can see there at N1, we're going to make a big left turn and then do a loop right the way back onto the ILS. Need to be at 2,200 feet. And that is what our approach looks like. Okay. Back to the map. Meanwhile, we've made our turn at Lakey. Oops, yeah, full screen map. Now then, looking at the flight plan, we don't have any altitude constraint at Lakey. Topper descent from pilot to ATC's point of view is between here and ETSI's. I don't know exactly when it's planning to drop me down, but I guess we'll find out. And then hopefully we can make that sync up with the VNAV profile in the avionics. Right, so we've just passed the bottom of Lake Windermere. Let's have a look.
Flyer 10 descend to cross ETSI's at flight level 090, then descend via the ETSI-1 Juliet arrival with the ETSI's transition to cross NT at or above flight level 035 QNH's 992 at Newcastle.
Will cross ETSI's at flight level 090, then descend via the ETSI-1 Juliet arrival with the ETSI's transition to cross NT at or above flight level 035 QNH is 992 Flyer 10.
Okay, so there's Windermere back there, and Coniston behind it. You might just be able to see a relatively thin looking lake over there. Left it a little bit late to see those, I think. Also, I have to remember to keep switching between the full screen view and the instrument view, which I often forget to do. I just forgot to do it there. And then might forget to switch back, which would look less than ideal for you guys. So I try and make my camera views as uncomplicated as I can. Right, descent has begun. Now we've got our descent instruction. We're on the V path, which is good, with a constraint at 9,000 feet. And actually I'm going to set the altitude selector down to 2,200, which is where we're ending up at. And we'll let the avionics take care of the rest as we go. Can't see a lot on the ground at the moment, unfortunately. Clouds getting a little bit heavier, which is kind of what I expected. But we'll be descending through that cloud layer before too long. And we're 36.5 miles from ETSI's, and we'll get there in about 6.5 minutes. So we are well on our way. I will say, as much as I do enjoy the temporary sim, and I feel like I've got a lot of value out of this whole structure that I started building many years ago and have upgraded a little bit as we go. I'm very much looking forward to building something new, hopefully, more precise, more realistic, and really taking my fabrication skills to the next level. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I also think it'll take quite a while, so don't expect to be back in the back bedroom flying anytime this year. I suspect we're looking at probably 2025 before the new sim gets to the point where it's flyable. But I am very much looking forward to having a surround view again. As I said, I'm going to do this with TVs rather than go back to the projector system. Well, I say that. I'd say at this point I'm 90% likely to do that. It doesn't mean I might not change my mind. It is now possible to do multi-projector with MSFS with very experimental software from Fly-Elise NG. I've no idea how good or bad it would be, and I'd have to build a projection system to do that. So I probably won't, and I'll probably go with multiple TVs, which is a use case that we know can be handled. But again, I haven't tried doing multi-monitor in Microsoft Flight Sim. I don't know what the performance trade-offs are. I don't know what kind of performance I'll be likely to get. I get very acceptable performance on this machine with one big screen at 4K. I've got a 13900K in my sim machine. I've got a 4090. In graphics cards terms, that's as good as it gets right now. I mean, is there a 4090 Ti yet? There might be. But, it's basically right up there. Processor-wise, it's no longer the fastest. It wasn't the fastest for very long at all. And specifically in Microsoft Flight Sim, we know that the AMD Ryzen processors with the X3D, 3D cache tend to outperform the Intel equivalents. So the highest end AMD X3D would probably give me overall slightly better performance. But this machine is pretty close to as fast as it gets, and I have aggressively configured it for performance. And whilst I don't have the
Flyer
FPS
10
counter on at the
contact
moment,
Newcastle approach on 124.37. Have a nice day.
Approach on 124.37 Flyer 10.
well, I don't have the FPS counter on. I know that I'm getting a sustained 30 FPS, which is where I've got mine locked pretty much all of the time, with maybe the occasional stutter when things are loading.
Approach Flyer 10 descending
I'm
to
pretty satisfied with that.
3,500 feet.
Flyer 10 good morning. Continue descent via the ETSI-1 Juliet arrival, for the ILS approach to runway 07 with the NT1 transition at Newcastle.
Continue descent via the ETSI-1 Juliet arrival, for the ILS approach to runway 07 with the NT1 transition Flyer 10.
Okay, that's everything that I expected. As I was saying, yes, I don't know what kind of performance I'll get with multiple screens if my FPS were to routinely drop below 30. I don't think that would be acceptable. We've got people doing this who are suggesting they can manage better than 30 on a regular basis, but I don't know exactly what kind of settings they're having to have to get that. So as everything, it's a trade-off, and we'll find out more about that when we get there. But it's definitely the direction I want to go in. I don't want to be stuck with one screen forever. It's a nice screen, but having that situational awareness that comes from multiple monitors is what I want to get back to. It's the thing that I miss the most about the old projector-based system, the fact that I could look to the right, look to the left. I could see myself, lining up with the runway threshold and know when to turn. At the moment, I have to kind of guess it, or else I have to move the camera around like this, which is just not as good. So, and whilst I did at one point try a Tobii eye tracker, I just don't really like head tracking. I don't like the fact that every time my head moves a little bit, this thing moves. And I don't see any way to configure that so that it only moves when you really move your head. And even then, moving your head, if I move it this far, I can't even see that screen. So all suboptimal solutions from my perspective. Right, we're getting on towards 10,000 feet now. Transition at Newcastle is 5,000 feet, so we're staying on standard barrow for now. We're cutting the corner off at Etsy, so we're making that that turn right now. Once I get to Iruxi, I shall want to activate my approach. Well, once I get nearer to N1, I guess. I wonder if the avionics will do it for me. They probably should. Yeah, okay, well, let's let it do that. Oh yeah, got some interesting striping in the clouds. That's the thing you see occasionally still. I think it's to do with the way that the clouds are generated. Just sometimes you get that kind of stripy effect. Presumably that's something they'll improve in a future version. Right, let's go back to the checklists. And we'll look at the descent checklist. So thrust lever as required. Landing field elevation check, it's 252 feet. Ice protection as required. We're at -7 outside. I'm going to come down through these clouds. I'm going to leave the ice protection on for now. Can't really hurt, can it? Local setting on the altimeter, not till we get to 5,000 feet. Seats and seat belts secure. You're belted up, right? If not, belt up now. And we're ready for the approach checklist, and we're not there yet. So back to the map. Let's just check my speeds on the flight plan. So 220 knots at Etsy's, and indeed that's been adjusted. 220, getting to Iruxi, 200 knots, and then on the approach, 185 at D259F, and then we'll want to slow down to 100 knots by the final approach fix, which is our approach speed. And I think that'll do us. Missed approach there in case we need it, but hopefully we won't. So I think we're good on the flight planning. Right, approaching 6,100 feet. Approaching 6,000 feet. And now we're leveling off. Next descent in a little over 5 minutes, apparently, at Iruxi. I don't think that's the case. Yeah, it's going down rapidly. We should be descending again very shortly, because only got to go down 500 feet. So not the end of the world, and by that point we probably will be in the clouds. And the turn at Iruxi is already happening, so... I'm going to trust the avionics to get it right. Let's keep an eye on them. If they don't, I can always intervene. All right, approach is activated. TOD has been recalculated. Yeah, it looks better now. So should just work. You should learn to trust the avionics. They're generally pretty good. Skimming the cloud tops. How nice does that look? Let's just go outside and see. This is a shot for the thumbnail. See the ground through the holes in the clouds. Got a town down there. That looks like oh, it's Concept, old mining town. I say old mining town. It's not the town is old, but I don't think they mine there anymore. But yeah. Mining, coal and steel, I think, was Concept. So we're kind of entering territory that I know quite well. I mentioned that I had a personal connection with Newcastle. I do. all my family are from Newcastle originally. My parents were both Geordies. And whilst I was born in the Midlands, so I'm not myself a Newcastle resident, I spent a lot of time there growing up, obviously, when we went to visit grandparents and other family. So it's a town I'm familiar with, but perhaps regrettably, it's a town I've not been to for a long time now. I think we've got to be going on for probably 30 odd years since the last time I was in Newcastle. So maybe I'm overdue a visit. But I will enjoy, even in the sim, seeing the town centre as we fly over it, assuming, of course, that we get to see what we're doing. And I'm not sure. There's the airport. Let's just go outside again. We're about to cross the river. I think with this cloud, though, we're really not going to see much. And the town centre is off to right over here. We just see some stuff down there. Maybe we can. Let's go. Can't really see much. You would otherwise be able to see Newcastle town centre and the bridges, etc. But at this point, I don't think we're going to. There is the river, at least. But you've got to go further down the river to actually see much of any great interest, unfortunately. Never mind. All right, so we're cutting the corner off at NT1 and coming round onto our approach course. Slowing to 185 knots. And we're back on our descent path. Okay, check this time again. And now we're on the approach checklist. Right, so approach briefing is complete. You've been briefed. All seats in normal upright position. They are. Ice protection as required. To keep it on for now, we've got clouds, we've got minus temperature outside. Lights as required. Landing light can go on. Flaps to 50%. Now we're a little bit early for that, I'm going to be honest with you. 185 knots, we don't need the flaps. You can drop the flaps at 168 knots as well as the gear. So we're a little bit too fast for it. And airspeed to 140 knots. So we're not quite ready for that point yet. So we'll just leave that checklist for now. Right, so we're heading out on our sort of teardrop shaped approach. Let me go back to the main map for that. Unfortunately, I had the wrong view up for a while, so you haven't seen all of the stuff on the avionics I've been doing. I apologise. Like I said earlier, managing the cameras whilst you're doing lots of other things is not the easiest thing to do, but I think ultimately no harm, no foul. So you have seen basically what's going on. Turn will be coming up shortly. We're going to come back round on the approach to runway 07. Right, I'm going to set my altitude target down to 0 so we can let VNAV complete its thing. We'll put the headphone sim off, just so I can monitor the engine noise. We'll be getting into some cloud now. Right. Let's have flaps 1 since we're now at 140 knots. And we're slowing down to final approach speed, which is 100 knots. I can see the localizer superimposed on the course, and I think we will transition to the localizer automatically when we get around. Oh, we've got a bit of rain here. No longer freezing outside. It's exactly 0. Well, I suppose that is freezing still. So the ice protection can go off when we're out of this cloud. Shame we couldn't see more of Newcastle on the way. The bridges over the Tyne, particularly the swing bridge, were always things that I found fascinating to look at. And there's even a new bridge there now, I think. Yeah, I can see the ground again. Coming around to CF07, at which point we need to be at 2,200 feet. The aircraft is managing the descent. Visibility 0 at this point, but things will improve, I'm sure, as we drop out the cloud. FMS starting to line up with the localizer. And when the two coincide, I dare say we will go over. One thing I had forgotten to do was to go over to the local barrow at 5,000 feet, so that's my bad. Which means we were slightly below where we thought we were, but the avionics seems to be coping. So fingers crossed all of that will just work. Alright, 0.9 miles to CF07. If I'd been able to put a speed constraint in it at CF07, I'd have put it at maybe 120 knots or 140 knots. And then slow down at FF07, but the avionics weren't going to let me do that. So I guess we're flying this a little bit slower than we strictly speaking need to. Bring back the thrust levers to just above idle. Okay, we've gone to the localizer. Still not seeing anything, but top of descent again in 45 seconds or thereabouts. We'll drop down. You can see the glide slope coming. So let's go to approach mode, arm the glide slope, and let the ILS do its thing. Alright, checklist time. Before landing checklist. Right. Landing gear. I'm going to bring the landing gear down at the final fix. So we'll run that checklist when we get to FF07. We're only 1 mile away from that. Glide slope is in and the localizer is in, so we are on the ILS. And just start to see the ground again. Yeah, there you go. Runway in sight. Right, gear down, flaps 2. Okay, I'm getting the flaps ice message, which means we've had icing on the flaps. I don't think that the ice protection could do much about that. I think we're okay still. You could land this at flaps 1 without too much difficulty because the stall speed is pretty low, even at flap 1. I guess we'll see how we go, but that is a red message, so not ideal. I guess I'd need to read the POH to figure out what I should do with that. Right, speaking of which, we can have the ice protection off. We're now in positive temperatures and we are out of the cloud. So, before landing checklist, landing gear down locked, flaps as required, they're at full. Cabin pressure differential around about 0, it is. Windshield IPS switch off, yes it is. Autopilot comes off as when we land, and the airspeed will be at VREF, which, yes, that'll all be fine. Right, let's continue the approach. We are configured for landing. Fingers crossed everything will be good. Tower, fly 10, established on final. Tower, flyer 10, established on final.
Flyer 10, contact tower on 119.7. Have a good morning.
Thought it already was on the tower.
119.7 flyer 10.
Okay, well this got out of sequence.
Tower flyer 10 at 1,200 feet.
Flyer 10, good morning.
Tower, flyer 10 is established on final.
Flyer 10 winds a 021 at 8 knots, cleared to land runway 07.
Clear to land
We got
runway 07
slightly
flyer
out of sync there a little bit, but we seem to be back where we need to be. Alright, fully configured for landing. Autopilot's going off at probably 500 feet. So the landing field elevation is 252 feet, so on the altimeter, yeah, about 700 feet or thereabouts. For some reason we just acquired the menu at the top of the screen, don't know why. Right, eyes down for full house. Got a 10 knot, pretty much direct headwind, so shouldn't be a major factor. Radar altimeter says nearly 300. Autopilot off. Auto throttle is also out. The two are linked in this aircraft, unlike, say, the Honda Jet. A little bit bumpy. Power to idle. Now I want to try not to dive bomb the runway. I do have a tendency to do that. I'm not exactly brilliantly lined up, but you know what? It's going to have to do. Ooh. Equally, I don't want to float. Right, you know what? I'll take that. That wasn't terrible.
Flyer 10, exit runway when able.
Alright, I'm going to need to run down to the next taxi. I don't want this one on the right because that's going to take me to the wrong place. I'm going to come off at Charlie. Let's have the flaps up. Taxi lights on, ready. Although, like I say, they are basically the same thing. and we're coming off to the left here. Landing light off. Strobe lights stay on because strobe lights are the equivalent of the beacon on this aircraft. Ground, Flyer 10 is clear of the active.
Flyer 10, welcome to Newcastle, contact ground on 121.72. Enjoy your morning.
Ground on 121.72 Flyer 10.
Yeah, that was still tower, wasn't it? Never mind. Ground, Flyer 10, request taxi to parking.
Flyer 10 taxi to general aviation parking.
Taxi to general aviation parking Flyer 10.
Anyway, welcome to Newcastle. This is Orbex's Newcastle. At least I got it from Orbex. I'm not sure if they actually made it. They do distribute a lot of other people's airports. Newcastle Airport, previously known as Eldon Airport, I believe. I'm not sure if they still know it by that name anymore. The very last time I flew into it, which was a long time ago, it was still called Eldon. But we've got some nice stuff here. We've got the fire training over there. Got some fire buildings over there, some fire trucks, etc. Got the control tower. Now, general aviation parking is actually over the other side of the airport, so I'm going to have to basically taxi to the main apron and then along and back and cross the runway to get to the GA parking. But that's what they told me to do, so that is what I will do. Got some statics here, but also there's going to be some FSLTL traffic. There's the VOR, or a VOR. Yeah, look at that strobing effect on the texture over there. Again, that's the thing you see from time to time. I think it's an artifact of TAA. Again, hopefully something they can improve in future. Right, so here's the main apron. I'm just going to turn left at this point. Flight director can go off as well. Complete the checklist. Landing checklist when I'm already done, so get rid of that. No go around checklist. After landing checklist. Let off all my speed there. Flaps up, yes they are. Wing stab IPS switch is off, it is. Engine IPS switch as required, it's off. Probe heat switch goes off, important, you're not allowed to leave it on for long on the ground. External lights as required, they are good. Brakes check, they're all good to me. And then we're at shutdown when we've parked. All right, so let's make a left turn here. It's going to take me back onto the runway. Now, you'd have thought it would have said, you know, either authorization to cross the runway or hold short or whatever. It isn't smart enough to recognise that the route I've got to take will take me across the runway. If it had more detailed taxi data, it probably could, and I'm hopeful that something like Beyond ATC might be better at that. But I'm just going to hold here for a second on my own recognizance, and we'll check the runway. Everything looks good. I'm just going to go outside just to be absolutely certain. Yeah, nothing landing, nothing on my radar. so we can proceed to cross. And then GA parking is straight ahead here. So we'll go and park somewhere over here. These will all be static models because FSLTL doesn't do GA traffic from what I recall. And we can park up by this Cessna, I guess. Again, bled off all my speed, and it's very slightly uphill, so I need quite a lot of power to get going again. And we'll stop here. That'll do. Parking brake on. Okay. Shutdown checklist. Thrust lever to idle. Yes. Engine IPS switch off. Bleed switch off. Oxygen master switch off. Lights off, engine knob to off, engine button press, stop the engine. Watch for the N2 to go below 24%. Yes, it has. Caps pin replace. Right, Gen 1 and 2 off. Well, before we do that, let's connect the ground power and open the door. Gen 1 and 2 switches are off. BAT 1 and 2 switches can go off, but not till I've disconnected the ground power. So I think we are where we need to be up until the point where we go complete shutdown. Right, welcome to Newcastle, everybody. That was quite a nice flight. I enjoyed that. And relatively few mistakes, which, you know, for me is pretty good. Yeah, the drone cam's got a bit badly positioned there. I parked probably a little bit too close to... Whoa. Careful with the drone cam there. Did I park a bit too... Actually, no, that's all right. That's all right. I was going to say I parked a bit too close to that Cessna, but I think it's okay. That's obviously a flight school there, so I guess I've parked in their spot. Sorry, folks. I mean, I could have parked over there maybe, but, you know, it's all GA. I don't think Newcastle has a jet centre per se, so I'm not really sure where private flights would go at this airport. Maybe I'll do a bit of research and find out, but this will do as a stopping point for now. As you can see, it's a nice looking, nicely modelled airport. Quite glad to be visiting it in the sim and on the channel finally, and hopefully we'll do a bit more flying here in the future. And some of that traffic is probably FSLTL, so I'm not seeing anything moving nor anything flying in, but again, given the weather, I'm not surprised if there's not a huge amount of traffic at the moment. Okay, that's your lot for today, and I'm losing my voice. So as always, I'll say thank you for your time, and I appreciate every minute spent watching any of these videos. I know sometimes they can be a bit long and rambly, so I appreciate you sticking with me. If you enjoy the video, it would help if you click the like button. If you dislike the video, it would help me if you click the dislike button. If you have any comments or questions, then please leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer all comments as soon as I can. And if you would like to subscribe to the channel, I'd very much welcome that, but please do click the little bell icon so you know when I publish a video, because the schedule here can be a bit erratic, although at the moment I'm doing a lot better than I usually do. So fingers crossed I can keep that up. And otherwise I'll say, again, thanks for watching. Check out the next video, which should hopefully be up in a week or so's time. And I look forward to seeing you back on the channel very soon.